Welcome to Putting the Real in Real Estate, the podcast about all things real estate, all things local, and all things life, where we hope to inform, entertain, and inspire. What's up, everybody? Welcome into episode 13 of Putting the Real in Real Estate. I'm your host, Glenn Hockersmith, and as always, I want to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us today. And as I always like to say, time is our most precious and valuable commodity, so I'm not going to waste any of yours today. I just want to thank you for listening or watching. We have a great guest today. His name is Tony Williams. He's with Interlinc Mortgage, and he is also a former professional athlete, standout at University of Louisville, and played ball for several years overseas. So out of respect for your time, we're going to get right to today's interview. I hope you enjoy it. All right, today's guest is a Louisville native and former University of Louisville men's basketball standout who also played 10 years of professional ball overseas. After his playing career ended, he became a teacher for students with learning and behavioral disorders and head basketball coach at his alma mater, Louisville Doss High School. Tony's now a loan officer at Interlinc Mortgage and works tirelessly to give back to his community through different organizations to provide mentorship, free sports, lunches, education clinics, and school supplies for our youth. Tony is also co-founder and CEO of Former Athletes Now. And last but certainly not least, he's husband to Tiffany and father to Simba and Skylar, his son and daughter. Tony Williams, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Glenn. Thanks so much for having me.
I appreciate you joining us today. Tony, I think most people know you around here from your time in a Cardinal uniform, and we're definitely going to talk about that. But you've been blessed with quite an interesting life outside your time at Louisville. So let's talk about what it was like growing up in the city of Louisville, how your life and perspective changed once you left the States to play ball in Turkey, France, Italy, and Lebanon. I think I've got that correct. And then how all of those experiences kind of shaped who you are today.
Sure. So pretty much grew up moving around until I was about 6 or 7 years old, and then settled in the West End of Louisville. My mom's a single mom. My brother and I, we were her joy, and she pretty much chose to work at home and own her own business, which was making jewelry, so that she could spend time with us and raise us and still provide for us. So that's kind of, how I saw life as it began. I would often wake up at 6 a.m. and go down in the basement and help her shine up some brass jewelry or bead some things, or just do whatever she needed so that we could be ready when she went out to beauty shops to sell her jewelry. And then, going outside and hanging out. One passion that I found was basketball, and obviously having an uncle, Keith Williams, that played 10 years prior to when I played. I would watch him. I would hear a lot of people say that we looked alike, and he's my mom's baby brother. So naturally, I kind of wanted to be like him. Seeing him on TV, seeing him play for Hall of Fame coach, my former coach, Denny Crum, with some awesome teammates, LeBradford Smith, Purvis Ellison, Felton, some of those guys, Eric Sullivan. It was always a treat to, see the Cardinals come on, see a family member, and then go outside and try to emulate some of those activities. So that's kind of how it started. It's kind of how I found my passion. A lot of times my relief and my getaway was getting outside the house, and just really, I spent, multiple hours just out playing, playing in the dirt, playing in friends' backyards, walking to, Shawnee Park, walking to, any other parks that I could find where people were playing, and just fell in love with the game. So that's kind of how it began for me. Life wasn't easy. Life was hard. If my mom didn't sell any jewelry in those beauty shops, we didn't eat. So we had our fingers crossed every time she went out, and I would always, try to encourage her. And she's a great woman, and I owe a lot to her. And just, that's kind of what is what my foundation is based on.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you had some pretty good examples set for you at an early age with your mom, showing her dedication to her family and going out there and hustling and earning a living on her own. And your Uncle Keith, who you mentioned, who I used to watch on TV when I was a kid. That was kind of back in the golden days of when I was coming up watching the Cardinals. So that's that's a good thing to have. And so, obviously you went on to go to school at the University of Louisville and play basketball, and we're going to get back to that. But after your time at Louisville, you went to play professional ball overseas, and if I understand right, that was kind of right after 9/11. And I
Sure.
think your first stop was, what was your
Izmir,
first?
Izmir, Turkey.
Okay, so what was that experience like?
It was very scary. Playing college ball, obviously we weren't being paid. So with a professional contract on the line and first chance to actually make some money doing what I love, um, it was very scary. I remember waking up one day and just hearing about 9/11 and things like that, and then um, having to make a choice to, just kind of honor, what I was presented and follow my passion. And I decided to go forward with it, and it paid off tremendously.
So at that time, I'm guessing you were a single guy, right?
Yeah, I was single. I was still kind of running a little bit wild from my college days and thought Louisville was the only place on earth. And little did I know that the world was so huge. The world is so huge. And there are many other places out in the world, many other cultures, many other ways of life besides what I've known growing up here in Louisville.
Yeah, I imagine it was a bit scary being a single guy, just kind of going out on your own, taking off to not only another country, but a country in Turkey that's mostly Muslim country, and just a complete culture shock. I would imagine. So I'm sure you learned very quickly some probably some life lessons that you weren't exposed to here.
Sure, sure. First lesson was um, getting off the airplane and uh, exchanging whatever dollars that I had into, which then they had lira. So exchanging my dollars into lira and getting a big wad of cash with millions and hundred thousands on it, realizing that it amounts up to, those millions and hundred uh, cash bills amounted up to, $5 and $6. Um, and then second lesson is hopping in a taxi cab um, and finding a driver that may speak a little English but wants to take you on a long ride, right? Because you're American and they know that you've just exchanged your dollars and you
You're a
have
brand new Turkish
their
millionaire.
currency, and so they would find ways to not understand so that they can take you the long route to wherever it is you wanted to go. So that was lesson number two. Third lesson was grocery shopping, um, trying to figure out what matches up with what I like and how to figure out what was what, namely milk. Going in and seeing something in a white container in the grocery store. We were used to just getting milk, 2% or regular milk. Go in their grocery store, you see that white container, that's probably not milk. And it tastes a little sour. And then the meat, looking for hamburger meat. It's not hamburger meat, it's something different. So trying to figure out what it is that's safe to eat, that's similar to that I was used to. That was my third challenge.
Had to kind of learn to like yogurt too, I bet.
That's that sour thing that I'm talking about. I thought it was milk, took a big swig and spit it out. That's not milk.
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of stories about professional ball overseas. I think some of the leagues are different than others. Some of them take care of you a little better than others. Um, so what was your experience in that regard? I don't know how long you were in Turkey, and then how things played out after that.
Well, I'll say this: my first team, Izmir, they still owe me about $26,000. I don't ever count on getting that money back, but according to my contract and the way things happen, they owe me about 26 grand. And I had to make a couple choices whether to, come on home since they stopped paying me certain times in the season. I'm a rookie. I don't have any experience. I don't have any film to show anyone else. So it's kind of take it or leave it. It's a third world country. They don't have laws like we do that enforce contracts, especially for Americans during 9/11.
Sure.
So I was kind of at their mercy, and I had to make a choice whether to continue playing so that I could get my film, so that I could show my stats and take it somewhere else for a contract. And the decision to stay and fight through it and accept, kind of what they were throwing at me just to get a full year under my belt paid off. My next year, I was offered a nice contract in Italy, Reggio Calabria, where I spent 4 years total and had an amazing experience down the south, close to Sicily. Learned some new cultures there. And that just kind of opened my eyes up to, okay, that's Turkey, this is Italy. And then I wanted to do more. So that led to France, that led to, back to Italy again, and eventually Lebanon and some other places that I've been to.
So you got a real nice education over that 10 years that you were over there playing
Yeah.
ball, I'm sure.
Yeah. I call it growth. I
Yeah,
realize again that Louisville is just a small dot in this world, and there are many mesh of cultures that many of them would die for some of the things that we sometimes take for granted. Like the SUVs. I think at the time America was really getting into those supersized SUVs, and then you go over there and they're in Fiats and really small cars that take where we would put in a gallon of gas, they pay more for a liter of gas. And realizing that, wow, we really got it good, over in the States. It was really an eye opener for me.
and they're a lot closer to the source of that that fuel over there too.
So that kind of demonstrates and made me understand some of the things that we do and how we've pretty much put our influence and used our power to kind of get what we want, uh, namely with oil and some of the other resources that we take advantage of.
Sure, and I believe I read a story, somewhere, an interview that you had done, and you had talked about a bombing that had happened. I think it was outside of a hotel you were staying at, is that correct?
Yeah, that was in the latter part of my career. When I was married, my son was a real newborn. I mean, he was 2 to 3 months old. I had received one of my final contracts before I ended my career to Lebanon, and it was sweet. But I had to make a choice then. My path to practice. Being in Lebanon, that's one of the only countries I've been to that equally split Christians and Muslims, and they live in peace. Well, I use that term lightly, but um, a lot of their rifts are political. So they don't really have gang violence. They don't really just rob you out in the streets. But when they do something, it's to make a political statement. And the path that I took and my team took to go to practice every day. One morning I took that path and I just saw a bus, and it was taped up, and it was charbroiled, and it was a bombing that had happened the day before when I had a day off. But it just really put things in perspective once again, especially my first child, wife, and making a decision to keep them with me. So that led me to make the decision to send them home. And that kind of changed some things in my marriage, a very new marriage, new kid, and a wife that's a little bit younger than I am. So that changed the dynamics of my relationship with my wife, when my whole goal was to stick together the entire time. So there's another life changing, eye opening experience.
Sure, and, we all see that type of thing on TV, and it seems like it's a different world, but you got to experience that firsthand and, see what it's like to actually have that in your own backyard. And
Yeah.
you mentioned, you were newly married and had young children. So talk about that a little bit. Did you meet your wife here in the States, or did you meet her while you were overseas?
Well, my wife is actually Canadian.
Okay.
She's from Toronto. So I was in France at the time. roommating with my cousin who actually had a contract in Le Havre, France. And I was one of those I was training from my previous contract, waiting on my contract to come. And my agent suggested, since I have a family member that's over there with a contract, the best thing to do is go there and stay with him, train so you're ready, they can see you, and you'd get a contract quicker. It ended up working, but he was doing his MSN chat with a lady friend of his at the time. And I saw a picture of my wife, in the background. And I asked him and the lady that he was speaking with, just busted in the room, who's that? And a couple of days later, I didn't think anything of it, but they were doing the chat again. And she had, my now wife in the room in the chat in Toronto. And we went and did our own chat. And it was pretty much a perfect match.
Love at first chat, huh?
Absolutely.
So, okay, you spend 10 years overseas. Your family comes back. They're away from you. Is that kind of what really made the decision for you that, hey, it's time to hang it up and get back home?
100%, 100%. I was in the back of my mind. I was one of those when I grew up. I hated when the teacher would say, well, what are you going to do without basketball? Well, you need to have a plan B. And I would always just in my mind, I'd be like, just be quiet, please. Can I, have a passion and go for it? But towards the end of my career, I started hearing those voices in my head saying, you know what? They were right, maybe a little premature, or maybe I wasn't ready to hear that at the time, follow my passion. But they were right. What is my next move? What do I want to do with the rest of my life? I can't play forever. Taking a 10-year beating overseas with, less technology and less, you know, good equipment like what we have here, what I was used to, playing on a thick wooden floor, Freedom Hall, would preserve my career a little bit, but they didn't have that over there. I played on concrete in many situations. I practiced in the cold on concrete. So that took a toll on my body. So, having a wife, having a kid, and just starting thinking about plan B, feeling my bones, on rainy days a little bit more than others, not having any major injuries through 10 years. I pretty much said, I want to be able to walk for the rest of my life. I don't want to play until something happens to where I'm out, permanently. I have a permanent damage from this.
Sure.
And so I started thinking about a plan B, and naturally I wanted to fall right into coaching. I had a dream of just, some kind of way making it back to the University of Louisville and joining the staff and really finishing out, my life like that. And got back and just got into training kids and really wanted to give back to the youth. And that's when I got up with Ellis Miles, and he and I went out door knocking for sponsorships for his organization, Louisville Magic. And, we had kids such as Quentin Snyder, we had D'Angelo Russell, we had some other awesome kids that turned out to be really good players. And that really jump-started, what led to me taking my first job at St. Francis as a head coach, private school, really, really good school for kids, but not necessarily known for athletics or basketball.
Sure.
And then having a really good season for them, just a record, things that they hadn't really done before as a school, and then leading to Doss High School, to where, myself and other great players such as Derek Anderson and my cousin that I mentioned had the pro contract, David Harrison, and many other great basketball players, and even Coach Terrence Mormon. He's been a friend of the family. He's a great player, played college basketball. He pretty much recruited me, and just wanted to follow those footsteps. So when I got that chance to head coach at Doss, I jumped all over it, and that kind of sped me up to a few years back to where we went to the state championship in 2016. So a lot of great memories, a lot of great opportunities.
A little humble brag there.
Yeah, I mean, I love my Doss Dragons, always will.
Well, I'm sure that's a dream for a lot of athletes to be able to return to where they went to school and lead the program. And something you said a few minutes ago, I got to get back to. I just keep thinking of Ellis Miles knocking on my door asking for a donation. I'm gonna probably give him that donation.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not
and
saying no to Ellis Miles.
well, Ella, and anybody that knows Ellis knows that he's not shy. He's pretty sure about what he wants, and still to this day, he runs a really awesome Louisville Magic program, and he's done a great job with many other kids after I went my way, and he's still after it right now. So salute to Ellis. He was one of the younger guys when I was leaving U of L that I kind of would gravitate towards, and just kind of try to show him the ropes after some of the things that I had learned. So he's
I
grown
tell
into
you, he's still one of my all time favorites. Just seeing where he started and where he ended up in his career at Louisville and after, and that's what I think is so cool about this place is people come from all over. I think Ellis he was from Compton, right? Is that correct?
yeah, he's from Compton.
Yeah, and
Uh,
he stayed, and he's
yeah,
making an impact
100%.
just like you.
Yeah,
but you were from right here, so you have your communications degree from University of Louisville, right? Did you leave school with that, or did you come back to complete that after basketball?
yeah. I came back to get that when I graduated athletically. I was about halfway through my junior year academically, and I'd made the mistake that so many other athletes make by putting all my eggs into the basket of basketball and not doing what I was supposed to in the classroom towards the end. So I'd always been a good, fairly good student. My mom instilled that in me. But once I started smelling, the professional aspects of basketball, I kind of let my academics slide. So in 2012, I went back and I jumped through a lot of hoops and hurdles and humbled myself to get back into the program, Wade Houston's Junior Bridgman's program that allows former basketball athletes to come back and finish for free. And they didn't have to do that, and the university didn't have to honor that. But thank God, after several letters and several trips to different buildings and explanations, uh, I was able to get back in and recover some of those D's and F's and change them to A's and B's and raise my cumulative GPA up and really finish strong. So 2013, I graduated.
I think sometimes athletes are unfairly criticized for not graduating in 4 years. I mean, if you look at the general student population, most people don't graduate in 4 years. Most people don't graduate. And,
Yeah.
I'm one of those people. I went for a couple years and decided to take a semester off. And guess what? That semester has lasted, oh, 20, 25 years almost. So I think sometimes athletes are a little unfairly criticized for that.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. And that's kind of where, organization Former Athletes Now was born, because it's really not fair for an athlete, especially that plays at the University of Louisville. You can pick any sport now and ask them to commit equally to academics and athletics. First of all, in order to get to the level at the University of Louisville, you have to be a superior athlete where you come from. And meaning that academics already are probably come secondary at best, 50-50. And then you get to the University of Louisville, you have so many resources, but you only have 24 hours in a day. You use your body to excel in athletics, and then you have to get in the books, which, I'd be the first to admit, sometimes in class, you sit in the back because you had practice or you had a game, and it's just tough to stay up. You have all the right intentions. You get in that classroom, that air is moving through the room, that professor starts lecturing, and then all of a sudden you're in la la land sleep.
Sure.
So and then, like you said, unfairly criticized. Well, other students see that, that may have seen you on TV or may read your clippings and see that you're excelling in athletics, and they may, say that, you have an advantage and you're not taking advantage of your opportunity academically, which is a fair criticism. But at the same time, there's a lot of pressure to be great in athletics. So how do you balance that?
Sure, sure. And I was going to ask you about this later, but since you already mentioned it, let's talk about Former Athletes Now. Tell us what that's about, why you started it, and what the goals are of that organization.
Sure. Well, we've had to take a break just due to COVID-19 and due to just trying to work smarter, not harder. And really, it was just born out of the athlete that, like I said, had to put all the eggs in the basket of um, athletics or chose to do that uh, because that's what their passion is. And then one day it comes to an end, um, and trying to figure out a new passion that doesn't involve using your body to get or to fulfill that same level of passion. What is that? How do you find that? And then once you realize what it is, who do you go to, and what outlets, what resources do you have to get in those doors when you're competing against those same students that didn't have to worry about athletics and were, maybe getting internships, maybe, getting better cumulative GPAs because they only had to focus on that, and whatever other college activities they chose to get into. That's, it's difficult. So Former Athletes Now was born out of, how can I, with all the experiences that I've had, and then being fortunate enough to get back in the doors of finance, the essential business of real estate that you and I both are in, and more than ever now, realizing that our job is important. People use homes as investments, as they should, but they use them also for security for their families. And how do we maximize and fulfill that same passion through something other than sport? So
Sure.
I feel lucky, I feel blessed, I feel thankful that I had an opportunity to get in because, I didn't know how to read a credit report. I didn't even like looking at my own. My credit was terrible before I got into this business. For tax returns, you want to talk about tax returns? I don't want to see tax returns. That's the same things that will put me to sleep in the class and the teacher. But those things are important. Those things are the foundation, and those with experience know that. And if you're not taught that at a young age, or if you didn't have a family that was fortunate enough to own a home or to learn about credit or things like that, then how do you know? I never had more than, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 thanks to the Pell Grant prior to leaving the University of Louisville. And then all of a sudden, I get a contract and it's $120,000, $140,000. Well, what am I going to do with that? I'm going to spend it. I'm going to do all the things that I wanted to do when I didn't have any money. Well, that's the wrong way to think about it.
Right.
If you look at the big pictures, and if you want to see yourself 10 years later as successful, I didn't know that. I learned trial by error, and through many mistakes that I made, and the fighter that my mom instilled in me. Thankfully and luckily, I still have an opportunity through loan origination, not only to help people, not only to help myself and my family, but financially to come, close to what I've seen as far as being a professional athlete, and I'm grateful for that.
So let's talk about that a little bit, how you got into the lending business. I think a lot of people think that if you are a former athlete here, we'll use University of Louisville as an example, just because it's basketball is such a big thing here. A lot of people think that if you played at the University of Louisville and you come back to the city of Louisville, then you're kind of set for life, that you can just kind of name what job you want and be successful, and people are going to come to you just because they know your name. Is that is that true, or is that a rumor?
I mean, you can make it true. You can make it true. The fact is that in your business, in my business, and in any career that you have, experience is king. So you're going to have to put in some work to gain the experience that you need to build the trust. Now, will you get the initial opportunity because of what you did for the University of Louisville and the many people that have love for the University of Louisville? Maybe, yeah. But if you don't do right by those opportunities, then they're going to fade away as well. And this is a small town, Louisville, so word travels fast, and people remember you more than they remember anybody else that may have made a mistake on a transaction, or may have, not called them back exactly at 10 a.m. on Thursday morning, as you said you would. They're going to hold you a lot more accountable. So that's a double-edged sword. So yeah, you may get the opportunity, but you don't have the experience. I had other lenders purely using experience against me to get deals. early when I started out. And you know what? If I were them, I probably would do the same thing. You're going to trust your $180,000 home to a person who's only been in the business for 3 months? Are you crazy? That's absolutely true. So you got to gain that experience, and you've got to work your tail off, and you got to put those 2 to 3 years that it takes, that people say it takes to gain that experience and to build that trust up with referral partners and others that you work with. And that takes time. So we as athletes, we're spoiled. That's the University of Louisville. We want it right now. We want it quick. So you got to have that girth. You got to be able to stand in there, and you got to have a good coach. And I'll give a shout out to Jason Kimmelgore, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be in this business. He brought me in, he coached me up, and he helped me understand that it takes time, even though people want to do business with me.
Yeah, I mean, it can get you in the door, but you got to find a way to stay in the door, right?
Absolutely.
And that translates to every walk of life and every
Absolutely.
business.
Absolutely. Work.
Yeah. So talk about that transition into lending. You mentioned Jason Kimmelgore. Is that who you started with?
Absolutely. Jason had always been a mentor to me when I'd come back. He played ball as well. He's one of the older guys that would try to rough up us younger guys, but also use us to get his exercise. And we love going at it. He's a competitor. And I'd always, when I come overseas, again, I'd have a wad of cash, and I'm trying to figure out what do I do with this so that I can keep it in the future. And he would always give me sound advice. He would always help me. And then finally, after I was done coaching, I told him, I asked him and his mortgage company for sponsorship for something that I was doing for the youth. I was also selling my home at the time. And I asked him for advice, and I asked him for a donation for the community organization event that I was doing. And he did both. He helped me with my home. He connected me with an awesome realtor, and he also coached me up with just some ideas to help me in the business. And then he realized, after looking through the documentation that I had made for this event, man, you'd probably be good at being a loan officer. I said, what's that? He said, it's competitive. He said, you can make money. He said, you can help people. He said, you could do it until you're 60 or 70 years old. And you can have this office right here. And he showed me the office, and I said, you know what? This checks all the boxes. I'm in. I said, what do I got to do? He said, well, you got to pass the test that most people don't pass until the third or fourth time. So he knew me. He knew that would strike a chord. He knew it would strike a chord in my heart. And I said, all right, I'm going to pass it on the first time. I'm going to show you. He said, yeah, right. So then at that point, I was determined. I knew I wasn't going back to JCPS as a teacher and a coach. And I locked myself in the room, and I studied and I studied and I studied. And it was repetition. And finally, he felt that I was ready to take the test after many quizzes and things that I was reporting back to him. And I took it, I passed it, and got my license, and there she is.
Well, you've got a couple things going for you. Obviously, you're a great communicator, and you've got that teaching background. I'm sure that really helps you in the mortgage business. So let's fast forward a little bit. You're at Interlinc now. You're over there with a friend of mine, Bill Brewer. Interlinc's a great company. Talk a little bit about them and what they offer that other, there's a million mortgage companies out there. What does Interlinc offer that other companies might not?
Sure. Well, Interlinc has been the biggest blessing yet so far in my professional career, minus the day I, was able to walk in the door, and the story I just explained with Jason. But Interlinc and Chris Squires, he's really been a mentor to me as well. He's been very accommodating to my needs, and he's just been great. And then the team, Bill, Todd, and Holly, and my processing and operations team, when I found out the way that we operate on a daily basis here, and that would allow me to be out in the field and not have to necessarily worry about the minute microscopic pieces of the business that are very important, just that I would spend a lot of time doing if I had to do them myself.
Sure.
And I was offered the opportunity to just go out and get loans, just go out and build relationships, just go out and bring loans in, and we'll help do everything else. And your client will be very well taken care of. And at the end of the process, they're going to feel like they didn't miss a beat. The communication was there, and they're going to have an awesome experience on time as agreed, which is our slogan.
And I can attest to that, having personally worked with Interlinc on several occasions. They do a great job of communication and support. So what's your business look like right now in the midst of COVID-19? Has it slowed down? Has it sped up because of refis? What's going on there?
Well, I don't have a lot of refi business, just being newer in the business. But I will tell you that I have had the best 2, 3 months of my career, and I'm shaping up to have an awesome finish to May. And
Awesome.
June already, I've got close to 2 million in my pipeline. So business has picked up. I've been forced to grow up working from home, not being able to run in Bill's office and bug him with the questions that I have. I've been forced to kind of grow up and just work on my own and figure things out, which has been another big blessing, because when I start back June 1st here in the office full time, I'm probably not going to ask as many questions because I've learned a lot with being locked in at home. So um, it's just a big blessing. I mean, if I could sum it up in one word, it's a blessing. I've grown up a lot. I still have a passion for helping others. And when we get to the closing table and my client is telling me how awesome I did, how awesome my team was, that does something for me that has nothing to do with finances, that has nothing to do with personal interest or business. It's a passion, and that's that again, fulfilling that passion. It's a 30 to 45-day process. There are bumps in the road during that process that look like it may or may not happen. Then it happens, and you get to the closing table, and it's a huge relief, and then there's a celebration, and then that deal is closed, and then you've got to find another one. Then you got to start that process over again. So that this is a never-ending cycle, a never-ending feeling that is going to fulfill me for a long time to come with the grace of God.
It's a great feeling, and I share that with you. That passion. It's something. I don't know if people understand it if they're not in it, but like you said, you go through a lot of ups and downs throughout a transaction, and it's the best feeling in the world when you can walk away from that closing table and everybody's got a smile on their face or keys to a new house in their hand, and it's just a great feeling. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit. You've talked a little bit. You talked about former athletes. Now I know something else that's pretty important to you is the Cabbage Patch Settlement House. You've talked about that with me before, and I just wanted to give you a chance to maybe talk about that and inform people of the Cabbage Patch Settlement House and what they do and how people might be able to support that.
Well, as many events and groups and organizations that I've been involved with in helping to give back to. Cabbage Patch is one that I feel like, one, I will never ever be able to fully repay them for what they've done for me, and I have not done as much as I want to this point. So Cabbage Patch gives you the feeling that, and which is mainly true, that they don't really need a lot of help. They do things their way. They don't accept a lot of government or outside sources for funding. They have their own private funding, and they're not a handout. They don't do too much, asking for handouts. But what they did for me from age, let's just say 11 through age 15 or 16, really, really put me in a position to walk into Doss High School, spend 4 years there, and come out with a scholarship to the University of Louisville. And there's so many great mentors at the Cabbage Patch. Some, very few, are still there. And the place has changed and grown tremendously since the last time I was there as a kid. But they still have the same mottos. They still have the same philosophies. And it's all about the youth. It's all about structure. It's all about goals. It's all about experiences. It's all about respect and having fun. So they find a way to equally balance all those things through, team leadership, through I went on a canoeing trip to White River. I lost my life jacket after we took a break. My mentor, Rod Napier, he wanted to kill me. Um, um, you know, I've had dance contest routines and talent shows and so many kickball awesome experiences that kind of again shaped who I am today. That one day when I'm able, I'm going to really do something out of my way for the Cabbage Patch. And again, they've never asked me for a dime, or they never really even asked me for any more of my time. It's just a personal goal that I have within, to be able to do something for them that makes me feel like I at least did something, for them.
That sounds like an awesome organization, and your passion really shows through for that. So hopefully, maybe that's something that other people might be able to get behind and support. Um, so, all right. So, I'm a lifelong University of Louisville basketball fan, and so we're going to talk some basketball now, if that's all right with you. Um,
Awesome.
we've all been stuck in the house for a few months, and there seems to be a lot of negative things coming out around the university right now, and we don't have a whole lot to get excited about. So let's go back in time a little bit and talk about your years there. You were there from 96 to 2000, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So you played for the one and only Denny Crum, the
Yes, sir. I
legend,
did.
the Hall of Famer. Um,
Yes.
Now you left right before Rick got there, is that right?
A couple years before.
Okay. Okay. So what are some of your favorite memories about playing for Denny and some of the guys that you played for? I mean, you played with guys like DeJuan Wheat, Alvin Sims, Nate Johnson, Marcus Maben, um, Reese Gaines, BJ Flynn, a guy who I graduated high school with. So, what are some of the memories that stick out to you about your time there?
Um, NCAA tournament time is a big time memory for me. Learning from DeJuan Weed. DeJuan was like, you know, in high school, seeing him play at the University of Louisville, he's another one that made me, as soon as the game's over, I just got to go out. I got to play. I got to
Love
try
it.
something that I saw from what DeJuan Weed did. And then, knowing that Alex Sanders was on his way there, and Jason Osborne at the time was playing, and we had Samaki Walker, prior to me being there, who I thought would be there when I got there at least one year. And so many other great players, Alvin Sims, and it's just those experience with those guys, taking trips to Maui and Alaska, the Great Alaska Shootout, and just having the Cardinal gear at my disposal, like I had never had before, jogging suits, suits, the shoes, the hats, and things that I would have died for before I got the scholarship. Just living on campus, same dorm that my uncle had lived in, Stevenson Hall, and just growth and just being able to be free, and being an athlete for the university I'd always wanted to play for. I mean, those are my experiences. And you already mentioned playing for Coach Crum. I mean, it's like playing for, the nicest man in the world, but at the same time, one of the realest and the most knowledgeable guys. So you get the nice guy, but you also get he'll tell you how he feels, and guess what? There'll be some science behind it too, as to why it is he's saying it. So you know why, and then you give you an opportunity to work on it rather than to just beat you down and have you wondering, what's going on. So that was, and also I come from discipline, so whenever I'm in a discipline or a structured environment, I always do better, than when I'm just left, free to kind of just do whatever. So that was provided there. And then just college life period, I mean, you're in Louisville, you're from Louisville, and you play for Louisville, so imagine, just some of the things, just being able to go out and just kind of be acknowledged as one of the guys, and then having a real role on the team, which, put you in a position to where, you're essential. I guess that word's been thrown out a lot right now. You're essential to the program. So that's kind of in a nutshell was my favorite pieces as to playing for U of L.
Yeah, you were a 1,000-point scorer, right?
Yeah. I scored a little
Now,
over
now,
1,000.
now, Louisville has quite a few of those, but there aren't that many guys out there who can claim to have scored 1,000 points in Division I college basketball. So that's something. That's something to be proud of for sure.
Sure. Thank you, Glenn.
Um, along with Denny Crum, you had what? Scotty Davenport was there at the time. Is that correct?
Scotty Davenport still
Uh,
coaching. Great coach.
uh,
Jerry Eves,
yeah, Jerry
Stephen
Eves,
McCray, Jerry Jones.
Jerry Jones. I
You
love
know,
Jerry Jones.
yeah. So I had an awesome support system while I was there. So um, yeah,
So, all right. So I'm gonna call you out here and make you call somebody else out. Who was the hardest player you went up against in practice every
the
day?
hardest player I went up
Yep.
against practice every day, probably Nate Johnson. Um, Nate Johnson, he matches my intensity and probably exceeds it in many ways. He was freshman of the year, Conference USA. He got a lot of accolades as a freshman, whereas I was sitting the bench a lot as a freshman. I came in a little underweight, and I wasn't quite prepared to play as a freshman like he was. And he knew though that I had as much fight. So he would compete, and I would compete, and he would win, and I would win. And there are many others, having to practice against Alvin Sims, trying to get around him, try to go baseline around Alvin Sims. It ain't gonna happen. But there's so many others. But
Man,
Nate was
you
one
know,
of, yeah, he
Alvin
could.
Sims. I've never seen anybody get off the ground as fast as he could, man.
Yeah, he busted a pair of shoes like once or twice a week. So he had to keep new shoes all the time because he put that much pressure on those poor Converse, that he would have to trade them out like once or twice a week.
Yeah, and he wasn't friendly to those rims either.
No, not at all.
So, who was the best college player you ever went up against?
Best was probably Vince Carter. I mean, I had an opportunity to play against Vince, I think, twice in my career, and I mean, his career speaks for itself. But to see him in person and to see what he could do above the rim with the ball, it was quite intimidating. So he's probably at the top of my list as far as athletes that I was able to go up against.
Now, what about professionally overseas? Does anybody stand out in particular?
Professionally overseas, I ran into many guys that had played in the NBA or either were European that end up playing in the NBA. So that's a pretty lengthy list. But at that time, like you said, you're playing for your paycheck. So it's mano a mano at that time. I don't really have any standouts. I did play with a lot of great players. And so, yeah.
Man, I could go on for a long time talking to you about this, but we'll kind of try to wrap this part of it up. And I know you're kind of close with Chris Mack, the new coach over there, and I think he's been very good about involving former players in the program. You feel pretty good about the direction of the program right now under Chris Mack.
Yeah. I think my volume went out, so you may have to. Can you
Uh-oh.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You may have to edit this. So yeah, I think Chris Mack has done an exceptional job. Considering what he came into, what he came in, what he inherited. A lot of the things that he inherited, he's still having to deal with, even though he nor anybody that's still there had anything to do with what went on. And I really admire his the way he keeps his head up and the way his eyeballs is always letting you know they're fierce, and he's strong. So I think we lucked out with getting a guy like Coach Mack in a time that we came from. I think he's done an exceptional job recruiting. I think that he is he's a player coach, which means that those kids that play for him are going to want to run through a wall for him. And if anybody that's ever seen Coach Mack before knows that he can get fired up.
Um, I do think that I would help strengthen his organization, but he disagrees. He thinks he's just fine without me, and I respect that. But the job he's done so far in a short amount of time, I think COVID-19 was a little bit of a blessing for him, just because he still needs to stock his shelves a little bit better, and I think he's doing that right now, so that the true team is his team and the true program is his program, and that he can really show, why he's a great coach and that he can lead us to where we need to be.
Sure, I would definitely agree with you. And something else that sticks out to me about him is you can tell family is everything to him. Yes, basketball is important, and that's the way he makes his money, and that's his passion. But you can tell his family comes before anything else.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure of meeting his wife, Christy, who's also a Louisville native, basketball, women standout. And, she's as down to earth as they come. One thing that I've learned in real estate, when you're working with clients, is that if you're working with a husband and wife, you have to find out quickly um, who the decision maker is. And I bring that up because when you meet Coach Mack and how strong he is and how much fire he has, then you meet his wife, Christy. You realize very quickly, and I hope Coach Mack doesn't hold this against me, but you realize really quickly who the decision maker is, at least in their household. And they have an awesome family. I believe we have some of the same um, philosophies as far as family being at the top of the list, um, regardless of what else you're doing. And I agree with you. He does an amazing job of putting his family priorities out there so that they come with him being the coach at the University of Louisville. So you're not surprised when you see his wife at a practice or his wife at his basketball camp out running drills and doing things like that, or you see his kids running around, through practice or the camp or through at a game. You're not surprised because you know that comes with Coach Max. So I think he's done an awesome job with that.
Absolutely, I love that, and he's very down to earth too. I've seen him. My stepson's a manager on the Silver Creek basketball team, and I've seen coach at some of the games, and he's wearing jeans and a sweatshirt and sits with everybody and doesn't have any airs about him. He doesn't think he's any better than anyone else. So that's a really cool thing. So Tony, I know you're a bit of a foodie. So before we go, I'm going to ask you once we're allowed to, and over here in Indiana, we already are, at 50% capacity. But once you're allowed to get back into local restaurants, what's the first restaurant you're going to hit up?
Oh wow, that's a really good question, Glenn. To be honest with you, I I love my next passion is cooking, uh, and grilling and doing it myself. Um, I don't. I've fallen out of love with the idea of someone else making my food, even though there are a lot of great restaurants.
Sure.
I just feel like, uh, monetarily, as far as saving money, I can do pretty much what anybody else can do myself.
Yeah, I've
Um,
seen your pictures on social media, and I'm waiting for that invite.
Yeah, you'll get it. And then you use the word foodie. I've been blessed to learn about an awesome device called the Ninja Foodie that I use to help make some of my food. And then I have a Weber grill that I got a month or so ago. It's a kettle grill, and going to the grocery store and just picking out something that's raw in the package, and my kids looking at the package like, "What are you gonna do with that?" And then turning it into something that they just love at the dinner table. That's one of my passions as well. So I don't think that I'm going to be first in line to run to a restaurant once we get the green light and once things are whatever they would consider back to normal. I think that this time has again shown me and made me understand again how important family is and how much of an impact you can make, by sitting down at the dinner table and have an opportunity to look your kids in the eye, look your wife in the eye, and talk about life with no devices, no distractions, no others around, and do that over good food. And I think that's something important in families that has been a little bit dropped over the years. And that's something that I learned overseas. Italy, they take 4-hour break every single day during the week. They all leave work around noon, and they go home and eat with their family for 4 hours, and they call it siesta. Everything shuts down. I mean, businesses shut down, and then they get back up at 4 and work for the rest of the day. That's something that really stood out to me, because they're really tight knit, and I think that has a lot to do with it. So I'll be cooking at home more, even when things go back to normal.
Yeah, that's something I could get with, eating Italian food every day for for 4 hours.
Well, here's something that I learned. When I got my contract to Italy, that contract I told you, the first one, I was so excited because I felt in my heart I was going to be able to eat shrimp Alfredo every single day. I get to Italy and I ask for shrimp Alfredo in the restaurant, and they look at me like I'm crazy. There's no such thing as shrimp Alfredo. That's something that I think we might have made up. They use marinara sauce, and they use same ingredients, but Alfredo is not real. And then I ordered a pepperoni pizza when I was in Italy. So they brought the pizza out, and it was a big cheese pizza full of red peppers. So be careful. Pepperoni, be careful, because it's different than what we think.
So this you may have already answered my next question. I was going to ask you if you had to go back and live overseas.
Oh,
what
man.
city? What city or country would you pick?
It would be probably somewhere near Milan or Milano or Firenze, which we know as Florence, or maybe somewhere in the south of France, near Monaco, where the yachts sit up close to the city, and people live on their boats and then go in and shop and live life and then get back on their boat and live. So it'd be a toss up between the south of France and somewhere in Italy close to Milan.
Yeah, you got me daydreaming now. Well, it's hard to say I'm ready to jump on a plane, but I'm not so sure about that.
Right.
Well, Tony, it's been a great conversation. I'm not going to keep you any longer. Is there anything that we didn't talk about, or something that you have on your mind, or something that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, don't cut this out, Glenn, but you and I have not had a transaction together, and that's not your fault. That's not my fault. Well, I'll say it is my fault, because I got to work harder to earn your trust
I'll
and to
take a
earn
little
your
blame on
business.
that one too.
But I would love to work closer to you and to Schuler Bauer, and to have a better relationship with the clients that trust you and believe in you, because I have an awesome team here at Interlinc, and I would stand by any work or any words that I said, so that I could help your clients achieve their goals of home ownership. So one last thing would be, I would love to get some deals going with you, and make that a routine that we do as to helping people and helping ourselves and our families.
Absolutely, sir. And I share that 100%. So, and I'll say this now, if you're looking to buy a home or refinance, give Tony a call at 502-322-7737, or shoot him an email at twilliams@linkloan.com. I hope that's correct. I'll post all his contact info in the show notes. Also, I'll mention this: if you're a current or former student, athlete, faculty, or staff member at the University of Louisville, you can save thousands of dollars when you buy or sell a home with Schuler Bauer and me. So give me a call, and I can give you details on that, or give Tony a call, and he can put you in touch with me. And Tony, I just thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you for having me, Glenn. You too.
All right, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again to Tony Williams with Interlinc Mortgage, and a special thanks to you for choosing to spend some of your time with me today. Please be sure to support this podcast by sharing it with your friends, hitting that subscribe button on your favorite platform, and maybe even writing a short review. Also, head over to Facebook and like the show page, Putting the Real in Real Estate Podcast, where you can also watch, as well as my YouTube channel, Glenn Hockersmith Realtor. More importantly, give me a call if you or someone you know is thinking of buying or selling a home. I would love to serve you. Once again, thanks for listening, and have a great day.